This episode contains discussion of murder, rape and abuse of a child, animal abuse, arson, gun violence, and vigilantism. Listener discretion is advised.
On the morning of July 10th, 1981, shots rang out in the small town of Skidmore, Missouri. Outside of the D&G Tavern, the engine of a truck could be heard roaring to life until it gave out and eventually the engine blew. In the truck was the body of Ken Rex McElroy, who was known in Skidmore as the town bully. Incredibly, with dozens of people surrounding the truck when the shooting took place, there were no witnesses who could identify the shooter or shooters besides McElroy's wife, who was in the truck beside him when he was shot.
Jeesh.
Goodness.
This is, we've had one case that we've covered that I can recall that had an air of like the vigilante justice. Ellie Nessler. This is a whole other level.
It honestly reminds me of the movie and the case that we have covered, Bernie.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
Yes.
All right. Well, I guess we can just, kind of jump right on into it.
Let's launch right into it.
Yeah, let you guys know what in the heck we're talking about. So we are going to Missouri, and the people of Skidmore, they say Missouri.
I was going to say it, or Missouri, depending on where you are.
Yeah, so Skidmore is tucked away in the northwest corner of the state of Missouri. Pause. We forgot to thank Mark, who wrote this episode.
Dear Lord in heaven. And then we also have to thank Lisa Lovejoy for requesting it, so.
Yes, so we love you guys. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, now back to Missouri. So it's about 100 miles from Kansas City, between an hour and a half to 2 hours drive, depending on the route you take or traffic, of course. According to the 2020 census, Kansas City had a population of just over 500,000. Skidmore had a population of 228.
In 2020.
Period. 228. Period.
It's smaller than your mama's Jack Russell.
We have said it with other towns before, but this one is the literal smallest this has to be the smallest that we've ever talked about.
I think, Rhode Island could beat the crap out of it in a fight. That's how small it is. They should and probably have considered having it carpeted. It's just that small.
Honestly, in this economy and market, you're going to want to hardwood floor the whole thing, but yeah.
Well, sure.
It's just fancier.
A little tongue and groove, finger pop its asshole right in there, yeah.
Farmhouse, chic, maybe.
Sure.
Yeah. It's teeny tiny.
Yes.
Bitty bitty. So there are, obviously there's tons of towns that are smaller than Kansas City throughout the country, but just kind of comparing Skidmore to Kansas City, it's roughly 0.046% of the population of Kansas City. It's just wild. And it seems like we're making a big deal about this, because we are, but it comes into play in the biggest way possible. It's just so important to the story. So taking a closer look at Skidmore, the median individual income is less than $25,000 per year, while the household income sits right around $40,000. So about 20% of the population lives at or below the poverty line. In 2021, the national average was just over 11%. So it's a higher percentage of people below the poverty line.
And listen, we're not at all trying to be like, hey, let's just dump on Skidmore, because that's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah. It's just painting the picture of what the town of Skidmore was like, what life in Skidmore was like at this time, or even now. It's just, you kind of need to know the full picture of the town. And we're going to go back to the early 80s. And at that time, Skidmore's population was almost double what it is today. It was 440 people.
Would you say that maybe we're going to go way, way back in the 1980s? Uh-huh. Yeah.
Clone high.
What we're doing.
You clone hide it right up. Yeah. I can't believe I didn't think about that.
Well, you're not very smart.
You're right.
Yeah.
So in this small town, there is or was a general store, a local bar, a town hall kind of / courthouse. I mean, this is not something where you've got a Starbucks on every corner or, like there's like the local things. It's definitely kind of giving that like Mayberry from the Andy Griffith Show vibes. They had a sheriff and a couple deputies. Many of the residents were farmers or worked in similar day labor jobs in the area. One thing that we often hear about small towns is there's no secrets, right? Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows what skeletons are in the closet. And we've even said, like, in several episodes, like, depending on how many people are involved in a crime or whatever, like, 5 people can keep a secret if 4 of them are dead, right? 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. Like, when you have multiple people having this big secret, it's going to come out.
You would think.
Not in Skidmore. Skidmore said, hold my beer, because no, it doesn't. For almost 40 years, the residents of Skidmore have managed to keep a secret who killed Ken McElroy.
So I think that that's why Skidmore's hair is so big, because it's full of secrets.
It totally is.
Yeah. Why don't we talk about who Ken Rex McElroy was?
If we must.
I know. We kind of have to, don't want to, but we gotta. So.
Yeah. And this is also like a perfect example of, we always want to be respectful of victims. But look, it is a reality and a fact that horrible people get murdered too.
People die. It's a fact of life.
Just because somebody has been, killed in a violent way, nobody deserves that. Nobody should have that happen to them. But there are good people that get murdered and there are not good people that get murdered. And Ken McElroy, you decide for yourself what you
Absolutely.
think.
So Ken Rex McElroy was born in June of 1934 in Overland Park, Kansas. His mother and father, Mabel and Tony, moved the family between Kansas and the Ozarks over the course of a few years, but they finally settled outside of Skidmore, Missouri. Ken was the 15th of 16 kids. That is a baseball team and a half. Like, that's a lot of kids.
That's so many kids.
So many children. I don't even know how anybody does it. So, of course, you might guess that money was tight, food was scarce. They were extremely poor, and they did what they needed to make ends meet. When Ken was 15 years old, he dropped out of school in the 8th grade and started to work odd jobs here and there to help bring money into the family. So along with those odd jobs, Ken started dabbling in a life of crime to make more money and help provide for the family. For the next few decades, McElroy was suspected to be involved in the theft of grain, gasoline, antiques, and livestock. And I think we all know, if you've been listening, dog heaving, that ain't okay.
It's not okay. And Ken Rex McElroy was the dog heaving son of a bitch.
He was a bullshit, great, burly bastard.
Absolutely.
And all of these things sound like, well, not ideal, but he doesn't sound like a horrible person. Like, sometimes, people feel that they have to resort to a life of crime. Just wait. Okay, he also made a living by leasing out land that he owned for hunting and farming, but he was a lifelong career criminal, and the cops around Skidmore and Nottoway County were familiar with him from the time he was 13 years old. McElroy was a huge guy. I mean, gargantuan. He towered above almost anyone he was around. He stood above 6 feet. He weighed around 270 pounds.
He was an intimidating presence, and he used that. It's not just that his size made him intimidating, he was intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
He used it to get away with crimes he committed. Over the course of his life, McElroy had charges brought against him 21 times, but he avoided jail time every time. Mostly because any witness would eventually refuse to cooperate with police or testify against McElroy, and you might be asking yourself why that is. That's because McElroy would intimidate them by following them when they left home or parking outside of their homes for hours on end, in the off chance that he would have to go to trial. The jurors would suddenly have issues and be unable to continue. Maybe it's because whenever they would go check their mail, boom, rattlesnake in the mailbox.
That is not nice.
He doesn't know where that came from, though. That was a coincidence.
No. And that wasn't him, of course.
Mm-mm.
Not multiple times with multiple people, but...
And the driving to people's houses, like parking outside of their houses, following them and stuff like that, he would also, like, if he was sitting out there in front of your house, he would just shoot his gun, too. And we'll talk about other things that, like, all of the shooting that he's done. But he would, I mean, just to scare people.
Yes.
And
It's
obviously that would
terrible.
terrify you. And the police in this town were scared of him.
Yes. And it's not that doing it once or twice is not bad enough, but he would do it for years.
Mm-hmm. And, like, consistently.
Mm-hmm. McElroy had a reputation around Skidmore, and many called him the town bully. He's also been referred to as a rural terrorist.
Mm-hmm.
He knew the people he could pick on. He knew the weak, quote-unquote, weak ones who wouldn't fight back. Some livestock owners would just look the other way if a few cattle or hogs went missing, or like a barrel or two of fuel went missing during the night. They would not call the police, but for some, even mentioning his name would elicit terror in their expression. Like, visibly terrified of this guy.
Yeah.
The people of Skidmore looked at it as a matter of self-preservation. If they called the police, retaliation would be severe, and one resident said, quote, "Our law enforcement never went after him very hard. The son of a bitch would just as soon shoot them as anyone else."
Yeah.
He ain't scared of nobody.
No, he was not afraid to shoot at police. And, you know, you would think that shooting at police or shooting police officers would result in, I don't know, say jail time at the very least. Never for him. Like, he did not care. He was always heavily armed. He was always more armed than any of the police officers in this town.
Yeah.
And they
And
would
he had a damn good lawyer too, which we'll get into.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, they just didn't want to, they didn't want to take the risk.
Exactly. McElroy had more than 10 children with different women. 10, that's just so many kids.
That is insane.
I read in one article it was like 13 or 14.
I know.
Yeah, like
there are differing reports of how many children he actually had, but either way, if 10 is a low end and 13 or 14 is the high end, 10 is still, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
It's not 16, but still, it's a lot. When he died, he was married to Trina McLeod. And again, there might be a lot of questions that you ask yourself. So here's another one. How did Trina and McElroy meet?
Yeah, let's talk about their meet cute.
Yeah, it ain't cute. When she was 12 years old, so that puts her in the 8th grade, McElroy raped her repeatedly. And after this, McElroy claimed that he and Trina were in a relationship, which Trina's parents obviously were like, nuh-uh, that ain't gonna happen. And so they fought against it. McElroy decided, okay, I got something to tell you guys. So, you know, he didn't agree with their 12 or 13-year-old dating a grown-ass man. So he's said to have gone to the family's home and burned it down, and then he shot the family dog.
Wait, how long has this guy been getting away with this?
I mean, this is the kind of stuff he does. So, like, if he's doing that to a family who, like, he's just trying to date, I mean, he says he's trying to date their daughter.
Yeah.
If that's the response that he's going to get to burn their home down, which could have killed anybody.
Of course.
And he intentionally kills their dog.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume the dog died. I don't know, but that's horrific.
Right.
Like, so, you know, imagine if you testify against him in court and you know he's not going to go to jail because he never does.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to you?
Absolutely. So after this, the family relented and they allowed the quote-unquote relationship to continue. And when Trina was 14, she became pregnant and she dropped out of school. McElroy moved her into his house with Alice, the woman that he was actually currently married to, which was his second wife.
Alice had to have been like,
Excuse me.
I thought we were already married, though. Yeah.
Right.
This guy.
I know. And it's amazing to me because there are multiple points of this where I'm like, he can't get worse. Oh, but wait, he can.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It does get worse. So at this point, McElroy learned that he was going to be charged with statutory rape. So he divorces Alice so he could travel to a neighboring area where he could legally marry Trina to avoid those charges. Because if she was the only witness to the rape as his spouse, she wouldn't be compelled to testify against him.
So romantic.
Can you believe this guy?
Isn't it though? Yeah. A little over 2 weeks after Trina gave birth, both she and Alice fled from the house, and they went to Trina's mom and stepfather's house. And according to police and court records, McElroy eventually tracked them down and brought both of them back to his house. And then guess what he did? He goes back to Trina's mom's house and burned it down and shot their dog again.
I mean, I feel like Ken has created an SOP, a standard operating procedure. If somebody tries to take away I can't even say woman, child.
Yeah.
That I'm abusing.
Yeah.
My process for that is to go get them, burn down their house and shoot their dog. Because he's done it twice now. Worked for me before. They left me alone after that for a while. I'll just do it again.
I was gonna say that. Yes.
What is happening?
Stand up guy, man.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk about what has led Ken to being shot.
As if all of that was not enough.
Exactly. So
I mean, again,
Right. Trina said that in June of 1973, Ken was indicted for arson, assault, and statutory rape. So he was arrested, booked, arraigned, and released on a $2,500 bail. How did that happen?
I don't mean to laugh, but it's just so ridiculous that he's so slippery. He's like Teflon for law enforcement.
Yes, 100%. A big part of the reason that he is like Teflon is because he had hired himself what some people referred to as a nickel slick lawyer out of Kansas City. This is Richard Gene McFadden. So when they first met, when Ken comes to his office and is like, I need a lawyer, McFadden was like, you might not be able to afford me. Just put it out there. I'm pretty expensive. So Ken takes out a wad of cash and just drops it on the table. And Richard Gene McFadden was like, well, you've done hired yourself a lawyer. And he thinks that's just the funniest story that he could tell.
You got me.
Yeah, you pay me a bunch of money, and so now I'm at your beck and call. But, I mean, he was. So he would go in and argue for Ken at every opportunity, and he was so good at it that Ken was able to get out of things with minimal consequences. Things like burning somebody's house down and shooting their dog.
Again, I understand that everybody is entitled to legal representation and, a lawyer's got a job to do. But could you live with yourself in your heart knowing that you helped this guy who has done all of these things?
You dirty bastard.
And we haven't even gotten to some other terrible things that he's gotten into and gotten out of because of his lawyer. It's just
ugh. So when he was arrested this time, Trina and their baby were both sent to foster care in nearby Maryville, Missouri, because she's still a child.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she's still a child. So she's put into foster care. It's just so disgusting. And this is not going to come as a shock, I'm sure, but Ken found the foster home they were living in. He sat outside of the family's home for hours on end. He finally approaches the foster family and says, I will trade you girl for girl. And he told them He knew where their biological daughter went to school and what bus she rode.
Again, intimidation. Like,
and if you don't want her kidnapped, you will give me my wife
family back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So additional charges were filed against him. And Mark made a note that looking into it, he's been unable to find exactly when or how these charges disappeared. But from a newspaper clipping, it looks like Trina refused to testify. And then she denied any and all previous statements. And then, of course, he's got this lawyer who can get him out of everything. But essentially, and I've seen interviews with Trina where she says, and people have, the interviewer has asked her point blank, did he burned your family's house down? And she's like, no. People say that about
faulty
him. Faulty
wiring.
It was faulty wiring. He didn't do that.
Is this like that Stockholm Syndrome thing where you fall in love with your captor?
And she would even say, he was a good and loving husband. He was a nice guy. People just said about him the rumors that they heard, but they didn't know him for real. I never knew him to steal from anybody or hurt anybody.
Right. She said she just, everybody just knew him from the rumors that they heard, but nobody actually experienced any of that with him. Where do you think the rumors came from, girl?
Yeah. I mean, it's really sad because also and she's been groomed. This is her abuser we're talking about, so it's really sad. But she even leading up to this, and I believe this is what was happening that day. I don't know that Trina actually went into the bar with him that day, but he would go places, to bars or whatever, the 3 places around town. But he'd have her sit in the truck while he was inside doing whatever it is that he was doing. But she'd sit out there with a gun in the car, because, he's always heavily armed, to make sure that nothing was going down or whatever. Why would you need to do that if he doesn't cause trouble with anybody?
Right.
It's just very obvious, but she's completely just...
She's been brainwashed by her abuser.
Yeah, it's really sad. In July of 1976, a farmer in Skidmore, Romaine Henry, confronted Ken about being on his property illegally and shooting some guns without permission. So, in response, Ken said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize this was private property," and left. No, he shot him twice with a shotgun and left the scene. And he was shot in the stomach. It was bad. He survived, but it was really bad.
I don't know how he survived, to be honest with you.
Thank
God he did, but I'm shocked.
It was a bad shot. But Ken was charged with assault with the intent to kill. Of course, he denies he was even at the scene of the crime. That wasn't me, I don't know what he's talking about.
Shaggy, huh?
Yeah. Well, okay, then who did shoot him? Whatever. Anyway. So Ken's lawyer filed motions to change the date of the trial, and it dragged on and on. During that time, Romaine said that McElroy has now started to park outside his house. He's watching him. This is going on for an extended period of time. He's doing this hundreds of times. When they finally went to trial, Ken found 2 hunters that would testify that he was with them that day, really far away from the scene.
Classic Ken Rex McElroy.
Yeah. The only person that could prove that he was there is Romaine Henry. And at one point, Henry was testifying, and Ken's lawyer starts asking him about his past. And during the questioning, Henry was forced to admit to a petty criminal conviction from over 30 years ago, which he had been concealing for almost 3 decades. And because of that, he was painted by the defense as an untrustworthy and uncredible witness to the jury. And Ken McElroy was acquitted on the charges for shooting this man in the stomach with a shotgun and fleeing the scene.
And Ken has a way more colorful past than Romaine Henry did, but somehow they turned it on Romaine Henry. That is disgusting.
This is unbelievable.
Yeah. And I wonder if because Ken had been charged with so many things, but he never got convicted on them. Is that something that, like, because there were no convictions, they can't bring it in? Like, can you bring in how many times he's been charged with stuff? Or, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, this guy has this very, small thing from 30 years ago. Ken is actively... Harassing isn't a strong enough word.
Right.
Terrorizing.
Yeah.
An entire community. Even that day, But Romaine Henry is untrustworthy because he made a mistake 30 years ago.
It has not ever reoffended.
Exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. In 1980, 2 of the McElroy children went into town to the local grocery, general store. One was between 10 to 15 years old. The other was younger, maybe 4 to 5. So when they were in the store, the younger child was accused of stealing some candy by one of the clerks at the store. They said, hey, you've got some candy that you've not paid for. You need to put it back. So after they were confronted, the kids go home and they tell Trina. So Trina goes to the store and she confronts them and she's yelling at them and all this stuff. And while she's doing this, she reportedly said something along the lines of, you're about to meet Ken McElroy. So essentially, she's going to unleash the wrath of Ken on them. And that's exactly what happened. So Ken started doing what he always did. He would follow the owner, who went by Bowenkamp, and his family around everywhere that they went. He parked outside their house for hours on end. He would make threats against them. He was stalking them, essentially, until he finally made his move. So one day, Bo was out behind the grocery store. Ken approaches him, shotgun in hand. They exchange some words. Things escalated. Bo is shot in the neck with a shotgun at close range. I don't know how, but he survived this attack. It's incredible. And Ken was actually charged with attempted murder, which he should be, because if you shoot somebody in the neck, what do you think is going to happen?
The odds are he'll probably die.
Right.
Right.
If you tell anybody, he shot this guy in the neck with a shotgun, most people are going to be like, oh gosh, well, I'm sure that he died, right? You're going to be surprised to find out that he survived. Absolutely should be attempted murder. And actually, he was found guilty at trial. He wasn't found guilty of attempted murder. He was found guilty of second-degree assault or something. But he
At least he's found guilty of something, right? You'd think, oh, okay, finally, it's caught up with him.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And they said that they had to kind of come down on some of the charges so that they could ensure that there was a conviction this time. So you would think he's going to go to jail at this point. But immediately his lawyer filed an appeal and argued that since there's an appeal pending, he should be released on bond pending this appeal. Why a judge agreed to this, I have no idea, but he was released on $40,000 bond.
Yeah,
Unless the judge is just terrified of him. Why would we
Right.
do that?
I have no idea, obviously, but when I say watching what I've watched on this, because there's a 6-part docuseries on Sundance TV or Sundance, I don't know what you call it. You can get it if you have Amazon Prime, it's on there. It's called No One Saw a Thing. And I'm watching it and researching and I'm like, I don't think my mouth could have gotten any wider because how is this possible?
Yeah. This is an incredibly violent crime.
Second time.
Uh-huh. And we're going to let him out on bond?
Let's let him walk.
I cannot. So immediately after his release, and he's pissed now, right?
Yes.
He almost went to jail. He's been convicted of something. So he's pissed. And now they've let him out back in the community where the Bowenkamps live and have to interact with him because this, again, it's such a small town.
He knows where they live. He knows where they work. He knows probably their daily routines, you know? I mean, he's been casing them and watching them for God knows how long.
He knows where their kids go to school. Yeah.
Yes.
All those things, all of that. And it's not like, in Nashville where you can go out every day in a week and not see the same person twice, like that's not how this town is. It's incredibly small. There's only like a handful of places you could go outside of your house. So you're going to run into people. Mm-hmm. So he goes to the local bar. It's called the D&G Tavern. He takes an M1 Garand rifle with a bayonet attached. Like, this is not the Civil War.
It's not?
What do you need a bayonet for?
To intimidate people, of course.
Yeah. So he brings that with him. While he's there, he made several graphic threats about what he was going to do to Bo Bowenkamp when he had the opportunity, because, again, he's super pissed at this guy because he got him arrested and in jail and whatever.
It's Bo's fault because he got arrested, but he couldn't just take it he got shot because he couldn't just take it like a man. It's like,
had to go tattle on me because you got shot in the neck.
Boo-hoo.
Yeah.
Get over yourself. I can't.
So several people got together and they went to the sheriff, Dan Estes, and they were like, okay, what can we legally do to stop this guy? And Sheriff Estes said, I know. Why don't we get a neighborhood watch together?
No harm in that.
This is the law. Like, law enforcement isn't going to He walked into a public place with a rifle that has a bayonet attached to it. I feel like that's not allowed. Right? I mean, so couldn't they have arrested him for that? And obviously making threats against people, like, with a gun in hand? Like, isn't there something you can do for that? And he's like, let's just have a neighborhood where everybody just kind of keeps an eye out, okay? Because they're terrified of him.
Mm-hmm. Everybody in the entire world is terrified, or the entire town, the world of Skidmore is terrified of him. On July 10th, 1981, several residents of Skidmore, and some say it was pretty much the entire town, but some say it's anywhere between 50 and 100 people, met at the Legion Hall. And in attendance as well was Danny Estes, the sheriff. And again, a question you may be wondering to yourself, just a general wonderment, is what were they discussing? If you were thinking why Danny Estes' mother named him and his twin brother Danny and Lanny, that wasn't it. It actually wasn't. It's something that I would like to know the answer to, but that's not what they were discussing.
They had a town meeting about that the week before.
Oh, so they cleared it up then. Okay.
Yeah.
Danny and Lanny. I'm sorry, but why do people do this with twins? Why? Why do they have to have the same name but a letter different? It's just... Yeah. Anyway, what they were actually discussing was what to do about their Ken McElroy problem. So at this point, they didn't feel like the police or authorities were able to do anything to stop McElroy. Understandably so. Every time he was arrested, he would always get out of it. Mm-hmm. They had zero faith that his upcoming appeal would go against him and felt like he would soon be free to torment them as he had always done. And again, I'm sure they would just think, it's like there was this comedian, Adam Ferreira, who had talked about his mom and like when she would get angry and it's like, oh, don't shoot her, it just makes her mad. This is Ken McElroy. Like, if you arrest him and he gets convicted but then he gets out, like, oh shit, he's gonna be madder than a wet hen when he gets out of here.
Exactly. And like, obviously we're not for and would never suggest any type of vigilante justice, but the other option for this entire town is that they leave. Move.
We are not moving.
Or get shot.
Yeah, or they'll
every other day.
Yeah. And their kids are in danger as long as he's out. Everybody is in danger. Like, you never know what's going to happen. Not only is he going to steal from you and stuff, that's the small potatoes. Like, you never want to get on his bad side. And it wouldn't even necessarily need to be something like you told his daughter that she was, shoplifting and please put it back or whatever. Like, he could get mad at you for anything. You never knew what it was going to be. Mm-hmm. You just could end up on the wrong side of Ken McElroy. And then you're screwed.
And when you do what you think is right by taking it to the police, it actually goes forward to a trial. He actually gets convicted, and then he gets out and he's madder than a pissed on chicken. It's like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
20 something, almost 30 times he's been charged or indicted, and he's not spent one day in jail.
And again, we are not condoning that you should just be able, this isn't the Wild West, hopefully. People have compared Skidmore to the Wild West, but that shouldn't be the way that it is. You can't take matters into your own hands, but I can understand that the town of Skidmore at this time was in between a rock and a hard place, so
yeah,
take that for what it is. At the same time as their meeting was going on, Ken and Trina had made their way to the town, and they specifically, like Tyrella said, they go to the D&G Tavern. The owners of the bar hated when Ken was there because I'm sure you can imagine, as soon as Ken walks in, everybody else GTFOs. Because they don't want to be around him because anything could set him off.
Exactly.
So, of course, the bar was not making anywhere near the amount of money that they would if Ken hadn't shown up. While Ken was there, he decided to have a few drinks, and then he decided to leave. Back at the Legion Hall, they received word that Ken was in town and he was at the bar. And up until this point, the people there had been talking with Sheriff Estes, and he had been encouraging them to flesh out the neighborhood watch idea. They were discussing specifics when someone entered and informed them that McElroy was right down the street. That brought the meeting to a close pretty much, and Sheriff Estes encouraged everyone, please don't go out and confront Ken. And again, that they should seriously consider the neighborhood watch idea. And then he gets in his police cruiser and he GTFOs. He RUNNOFT.
Bye.
So that goes...
Good luck with your neighborhood watch.
Yeah. I don't know if it's because Sheriff Estes knew what was about to happen. I don't know if it's because he was terrified of him, which makes a lot of sense to me, because he doesn't want to be around for that because he can't very effectively do his job. So maybe he's like, all right, I don't want to be a part of this. I'm just going to get the heck out of here. So Estes leaves. The crowd from the Legion Hall decided to go to the D&G Tavern. Suddenly, dozens of people fill up the tavern, and Trina and Ken sat there watching the bar fill up, and they finally finished their drinks. Ken got an additional 6-pack, which probably was not a good idea for him. You don't want him liquored up and, tormenting the town. Yeah. But then the couple, they walk out of the D&G Tavern, and they got into their truck. And as they did, everyone that came into the bar initially after they got there, they all come outside of the bar, and they start surrounding their truck. As the couple sat in their truck looking at the crowd surrounding them, a shot rang out, then another and another. And then the shooting stopped. The shooting stopped. McElroy, he slumped over the steering wheel, and before the shooting started, he had started his truck. After he was shot, he had his foot pressed down on the gas pedal, so the engine is, going full speed, just roaring, and then it finally blows. No one called an ambulance. He had been hit twice, which resulted in his death. Eventually, an ambulance arrived at the scene, and it was clear that no one tried to administer any aid. Immediately after the shooting, Trina was taken from the truck to a nearby bank, and she was told to wait there as the first shot rang out. Trina spoke with the police and said that she was able to identify at least one of the shooters. She said that right before the shots started, she looked behind the truck and saw a man named Del Clement go to his truck and pull a rifle out and then shoot Ken in the back of the head through the back window of the truck. Clement was a part owner of the D&G Tavern as well as a farmer. He had motivation because, like I said, when Ken would go into the D&G Tavern, he would effectively make the sales go way down because he's the only one that is buying anything because everybody doesn't want to be around him.
Yeah.
So he had motivation.
Sure. But also you could say, well, who had motivation to kill Ken McElroy? And the answer is yes.
Exactly. Every single person in the town at some point or another had motivation to do it. Over the years, though, he had livestock go missing, and Ken was suspected of being the reason for their disappearance. And some estimates say that there were 30, and some say that there were upwards of 100 people around the area of the time of the shooting. And Mark says that the official record says that there were 46 people who were possible witnesses. Of those 46, no one claimed that they were able to identify a possible shooter or shooters. And one person put it like this: everyone was looking forward or to the right. No one looked left where the shots came from.
Really?
Yeah, it's... wow.
Because what would your natural reaction be if you hear gunshots? You're going to look to where they...
Are
You're
coming
going to look
from,
where
right?
it came from. Yeah.
I would think.
Like...
I don't know. I'll probably go pick up my dog.
I think my initial reaction, if I was standing that close to gunshots being fired, I would crap my pants.
Sure. Yeah.
Immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would just run away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think I would be able to see. I mean, I would think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Trina told everyone who would listen that it was Clement, including the county prosecutor, sheriff, FBI investigators, and 3 grand juries. But she was the only one who was talking. Skidmore's population had little else to say other than that they heard shooting, they hit the ground to avoid being struck by a bullet, and that was it. They did not see who started it, and if there had been one shooter or several, or if anyone was fleeing the scene, they had no idea. One witness mentioned seeing Clement and a passenger speeding down a road after the shooting, but he later recanted that statement. The FBI kicked off an extensive investigation into the shooting. They talked with the locals repeatedly, but no one ever said anything. A year into their investigation, they closed it. One Missouri-based journalist said that the attitude of the town seemed to be, quote, he needed killing, and that was, of course, referring to Ken. In July of 1984, Trina filed a wrongful death suit against the town of Skidmore, Nottoway County, Sheriff Estes, and Stephen Peters, who is the mayor of Skidmore, and Del Clement, who had never been charged for anything. I saw that she had been asking for $11 million in this lawsuit against all of the,
Mm-hmm.
The case was eventually settled out of court for a little over $17,000. That's a big difference from $11 million to $17,000. I was shocked.
Big difference, yeah.
No one admitted guilt, and the stated reason for the settlement was to avoid costly legal fees, which would be associated with the case if it proceeded. Trina ended up moving out of the Skidmore area. She had lived in Lebanon, Missouri. After that, she remarried, but she died of cancer on her 55th birthday in 2012.
So young.
So young, and again, I can't say it enough. Like, obviously, Trina was a victim of grooming, of abuse at the hands of Ken. What a hard life to have. She is snatched up and abused starting at the age of 12 or 13.
Mm-hmm.
Then she's forced to live with him. She is groomed. She is brainwashed. Then her life as she knows it has ended because her husband, and they were married, whatever. He is brutally shot in front of her, mind you. And then she ended up getting remarried. I hope that the time that she was remarried was to a good man.
Yes.
But then she dies at a very young age on her birthday.
I know, it's so sad. And and she was just completely 100% devoted to him. Like, she could not remember a time that he ever did or said anything, untoward to anybody. And it's obvious, that she saw that stuff all the time. But
she was so loyal to him that she, unwavering loyalty. There have been a few different stories about the case. 60 Minutes did a segment on it back in 1982. In 1988, a book was written by Harry McLean. It's called In Broad Daylight. In 1991, it was turned into a made-for-TV movie starring Brian Dennehy, Marcia Gay Harden, love her, and Chris Cooper. In 2019, the 6-part miniseries that I discussed earlier, the one that's No One Saw a Thing, aired on Sundance TV, and it's about the murder of Ken McElroy, but also the town of Skidmore. After the murder, the town that sought vigilante justice was nationwide news. Newspapers had headlines that read, quote, "The town bully is dead," or, quote, "Woman says husband killed by vigilante." When reporters came to the town to talk to people, they were tight-lipped and treated everyone with disdain. Even today, when outsiders go to Skidmore, they say that they're made to feel unwelcome pretty much immediately. So I think, and I could be wrong, but this is like just my opinion on it, or, you know, that Skidmore kind of has this idea or mentality of like it's us against the world. They don't want anyone who is not from there or doesn't fit in to be there.
Yeah, it seems like they're completely distrustful of anybody outside of who they already know.
It's just insane to me that this is 40 years later, over 40 years later, and still no one has come forward. They are very, very good at keeping secrets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I also think, and I think this is obvious, but there have been, from what I've seen and read, there have been people who they know, but they're like, I am too scared of the repercussions if I do come forward because I'll get shot.
Right. And Del Clement has passed away. So you would think like if it was him, and I mean, maybe the fear has passed along to whoever the shooter was, but it does seem like there was 2 shooters, right?
Right. There were 2 different calibers of bullets that I think they confirmed.
Yeah. So it seems like if that was the fear that like once they pass away, then can you say something? But maybe it is kind of a generational, now the next generation is really holding on to it. But
go ahead.
I was just going to say Trina really felt like when they were at that meeting that they planned to kill him. And I'm not sure that happened because, I mean, Sheriff Estes was very like, have you thought about a neighborhood watch? Maybe you should try neighborhood watch. Good luck on neighborhood watch, y'all. See you later. Like, I think when they walked out, somebody just looked at it and said, it's now or never. Like, and it just happened. And everybody said, in solidarity, I just won't tell.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. It is really, really interesting and bizarre because they didn't find any casings or anything like that at the scene. I think everybody, again, like in solidarity, was like, we'll just clean it up and nobody's going to say anything. But I also read or saw when the autopsy was happening, the ballistics were inconclusive. It's like everybody was either in on it or something. I don't know.
Right. 'Cause it also seemed like, I don't know. Yeah. I couldn't tell if like they couldn't find the casings from it because people had cleaned it up. So then they would have nothing to match it with. If they found a gun that they wanted to test, there'd be nothing to match it with. Because somebody in the town also said that they heard a rumor that the case is still open and that the coroner's office still has Ken's head in a essentially freezer somewhere, so that if they do find a gun that they want to test, they can use the fragment that's still in his head.
That's science, but they don't teach it in the schools.
Right. And this is, it's got to be so difficult for whoever actually wants to investigate the case, especially now, right? We were 40 years out, so the evidence is not what it maybe was way back then. I don't even know what they had in the very beginning, but there was also a rumor that there were 3 guns involved in the shooting, and 2 of them had been driven out to Wyoming, and then one of them was tossed in the river.
How did you drive it all the way to Wyoming?
I don't know.
Yeah. And this is like, I mean, the rumor mill is like,
everybody has something different to say.
Working overtime, yeah. So
even down to the amount of shots that he had. Like, some people said, or maybe even shooters, let's say shooters. Some people were like, oh, it was definitely 2 shooters. And then some were like, I heard it was 2 to 3. And then the other person is like, well, I heard it was 5 to 6.
Yeah. There's just, it's like the telephone game. It's just, I heard this, I heard that. And by the end of it, I mean, even with like how many witnesses were there? Some people say there was 15 people, there was 20 people, some people say 150 people, it's like, how many people were actually there?
I feel like a complete bonehead, which I do about 2 times a day at least. But watching the 6-part mini series, the No One Saw a Thing, one person said that it was like the big fish thing with storytelling, right? It's like it starts out with the facts, and then the next person who hears it and tells it embellishes it some, and the next person who hears it tells it and embellishes. And then by the end of it, it's like, this was a whale. And when it started out as this teeny tiny little catfish or something, and it's like, then I thought, oh wow, the movie Big Fish. Huh, I get it now. Because I saw it when it came out and I was little and dumb. And
yeah.
Still am dumb though.
Exactly. It really struck me though that like anybody in the town that they talk to, or like if you see interviews like on the news or whatever with them, every single person pretty much was just like, would I shoot him again today? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that these people were tormented and they were in fear every day. Again, we don't condone what they did.
Absolutely not.
But some of their attitudes after, like hearing from them, like they would, some of them were just real like braggadocious about, well, somebody said they thought I shot him, but if I'd have shot him, I would have done it this way and I would have put a bullet right between his eyes, and like just kind of bragging on like, oh, well, I would shoot him and here's how I would shoot him. And I carry my gun around and I'll, it was almost like, look at me, I'm so big and tough and I'll kill somebody.
Right, but let's even talk about Danny Estes when he had been asked about it, because some people
sheriff.
said, yes, some people said, well, I saw Danny Estes on maybe a rooftop or somewhere up high, and he was like a sniper, essentially.
Yeah.
Shot the first shot and then everybody else. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, and nobody can confirm or deny it, don't know. But when they asked him about it in an interview, did you do it? He was like, if I wanted to shoot him, I would just go to his house while he's pissing off the porch. And I was like, you're the sheriff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have caught that son of a bitch while he's pissing off the porch, and I'd be out of there so fast nobody would know it was me.
Yes.
Like, just all these people are just like, well, if I'd have done it, you'd know it was me because blah, blah, blah. Or, whatever. Like, it's just, it's a yucky attitude to have. It doesn't make me, like, I do feel bad for the people and what they went through, because this guy was just awful. Just a terror. But I don't know. I mean, obviously you can't take the law into your own hands. I can understand them feeling like the law is not going to do anything. The justice system has already failed us so many times.
Mm-hmm.
But then to kind of carry that attitude and be so cavalier about it, rather than, you would think people would feel more like, I can't believe, in their mind, I can't believe we had to resort to this. Like, a human being has been, killed, like ambushed, and it's awful, but we didn't have another choice. But it was just very like, any of them that you talk to pretty much were just like, yeah, and I'd do it again. Like, proud of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's sad because they have to live, whoever it is, if they haven't already passed, they have to live with that for the rest of their lives, but it doesn't sound like they're as remorseful as one would hope.
Yeah.
You would be. Like you were saying, I can see their side, of course, because that's no way to live, and it's not fair if law enforcement is not doing anything to help them. But at the same time, it's not like you can just go around and shooting whoever you feel like has done you an injustice. Like, there has to be another way. But I feel like everybody in this scenario had a part to play in it, and it's just such an unfortunate outcome. No matter which way, like, every way you look at it, it's unfortunate. Like, that Ken never was tried or convicted of anything, even though he had done so many things.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that the townspeople got away with murder. It's unfortunate that law enforcement did not do their jobs effectively because they were either intimidated or whatever the case may be. It's all unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's a crazy case.
Yes.
But that's it, you guys.
Sure is.
Let us know, your comments. If you're watching, you can comment below. If you're listening, you can head to our, either one of our Facebook groups. If you're a patron, hangout group. If you're not, our case discussion group, and just let us know what you think about the case.
Absolutely. But thank you guys so much for watching or listening. We love you. Bye.
Bye.